gorgeous, finally spring day here in Western Michigan. I know you must be very dedicated about this topic to be here now when there are so many other beautiful things you could be doing tonight, so I thank you. My name's Erica Kubik, and I'm from the World Affairs Council of Western Michigan. I'm pleased to welcome to you our program tonight. It's the first in a series that will continue for the next 2 Monday evenings on April 25th and May 2nd. Before introducing the program, I'd like to acknowledge the partnership that is represented tonight between the Kent District Library and the World Affairs Council, a partnership that we expect to grow in the future. I'd like to thank Craig Wilson, who is board member for both the World Affairs Council and the Kent District Library. He really got the ball rolling on this relationship. Thanks also to Heidi Nagel, Communications Manager for the Kent District Library, and Dixie Anderson, our Executive Director at the World Affairs Council, as they develop this collaboration. Both the World Affairs Council and the Kent District Library strongly believe in open dialogue and fact-based, rational discussion, especially on controversial issues such as immigration and the growing refugee crisis. The programs that follow in this series are meant to act as a counter to the misinformation and fear-based political rhetoric we hear every day. As such, before we begin our live presentation and I introduce the panel, each week we'll be showing a short video published by the Department of Homeland Security that outlines the process that potential refugees must go through to resettle in the United States. It's about 4 minutes long, so thank you for watching. Yeah. Can we dim even? Oh,
The President announced a plan to resettle at least 10,000 Syrian refugees in the United States within the next year. In the days since the Paris attack, many have tried to argue that accepting Syrian refugees, who, by the way, are mostly women, children, and families, means that we'd make America a more dangerous place. This ignores the reality that anyone who seeks and is approved for refugee status in the United States must first go through a rigorous security screening process. So let's walk through that process and what it looks like for a potential refugee. Meet Rima. Rima and her children have lost their home in Syria. They've made the dangerous journey out of the country, and now Rima is seeking refugee status in a place where she can keep her children safe. First, Rima must apply for refugee status through the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. This is the international organization in charge of protecting and assisting refugees. For Rima to be considered a refugee, she must show that she's been driven from her home due to a, quote, well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion, end quote. If Rima meets the above conditions, she may be referred for resettlement in a country such as the United States. But before she can enter the United States as a refugee, Rima must then undergo a security screening process that is more thorough than any other for people entering this country. She'll have a deep background check. Her biographic and biometric information will be cross-checked against law enforcement and intelligence databases. Rima will also have to pass an in-depth interview, including an interview with a specially trained DHS officer to determine her eligibility. If found eligible, she then receives a medical evaluation. From start to finish, this process includes the involvement of the National Counterterrorism Center, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State, and the Department of Defense. All refugees, including Syrians, go through these security screening measures, and Syrians receive an enhanced review during this process. Over 23,000 Syrian refugee applicants have been referred to us by the UNHCR. Only about 2,000 have been admitted. Throughout history, we've seen that America has become a better nation by welcoming refugees in times of crisis. So many refugees and their children have gone on to make great contributions to our American society. Albert Einstein and Elie Wiesel, two Jews displaced by Nazi Germany, went on to become great Americans. We've seen great athletes such as Nadia Comaneci and Luol Deng flee communism and the Sudanese Civil War, respectively. Taking in refugees at a time of crisis is simply the right thing to do. We can and we will continue to ensure our own security while doing our share to welcome men, women, and children who are refugees fleeing violence. This is the United States of America. We can, we must, and we will do both these things.
Thank you for watching. Let me introduce the topic and speakers for this evening now. We move a little closer to home. Western Michigan has a long tradition of welcoming newcomers and refugees into our community. Yet the successful integration of new populations is not guaranteed and often requires collaboration, flexibility, and cultural understanding between the receiving community and arriving newcomers. In tonight's panel, moderated by Ms. Susan Kragt, Executive Director for the West Michigan Refugee Education and Cultural Center, our guests will describe their experiences working and living through the refugee resettlement process. Our panel will open up with some brief remarks. Ms. Kragt will ask follow-up questions, and then we'll open the discussion to our audience, including a virtual audience as the Kent District Library hosts a live stream of this event. Now, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all so much for being here, and to the World Affairs Council and Kent District Library for hosting this wonderful event. We're excited to have the opportunity to engage in meaningful conversation about what it means to welcome refugees in West Michigan. Before I have our panelists introduce themselves, I want to just tell you a little bit about the Refugee Education Center. Our organization is focused on the long-term successful integration of refugees into our community. So we do that using two different strategies, and the first is focused heavily on the education and youth support services to young refugees. We offer year-round academic assistance through after-school tutoring and summer programs, peer support groups that meet at schools throughout Kent and Ottawa counties. And we also provide support to educators and parents. We provide liaison services between schools and families that are newly arrived to the community. That includes helping newly arrived children enroll in school for the first time, learn their way around the U.S. school system. We do parent engagement workshops, really helping refugee parents understand what it means to support a student in the U.S. education system. As many of us know, different cultures approach education and school differently, so it's important that we help parents understand what are the expectations here. And then we also provide support to teachers and schools, and that includes consultation services as well as professional development opportunities. Last week we had the opportunity to hold the third annual Converging Paths Conference. We had around 150 educators from Kent and Ottawa counties gather at the Dominican Center to just discuss what it looks like to make our classrooms and schools welcoming, and how do we help refugee children succeed so that they can graduate and go on to succeed in life in our community. So that's a lot of what we do directly to support refugees. Our second strategy for helping to ensure refugees can succeed in our community is by helping foster understanding, awareness about refugees in West Michigan, hosting conversations or holding conversations like the one tonight. It really does take all of us to welcome refugees, but we see that refugees, as the video really showed well with guys like Albert Einstein, refugees bring a lot to our community, and we really believe that it's important for us to acknowledge that and let every refugee know that they're valued and that we will not be the same without them. So that being said, I want to give the opportunity for each of our panelists to introduce themselves and what brings them here. So we'll start with Tara.
Hello, thanks for coming tonight. My name's Tara, and I am a mother of two, stay-at-home mom, work part-time, but after my son was born, my background is in nonprofits and I've worked internationally, but after my first son was born, I just kind of was very down, feeling like I wanted to be involved, but kind of was stuck at home. We don't have family in town to take care of to take care of my son if I wanted to volunteer or do something like that. And so I was looking for something in the evenings, and through some conversations, a friend of mine who I got my master's in sustainability with at Aquinas connected me with someone from Kentwood Community Church who was a part of this Wayfinders group. And their whole mission is to connect local people with refugees that are newly settled and kind of build those relationships beyond what agencies can do, kind of extending past those first few months when they arrive. And connected me with a woman named Veronique, and we were kind of in similar situations, or not situations in life, but like she had two small children, was pregnant with her third, and had arrived a few months prior, and we connected and immediately became friends. And that is kind of how I started getting involved with refugees in the area. And so, yeah.
Hello, thanks for coming. I'm very delighted to be here today. My name is Abdi and I'm from Somalia. Actually, I grew up in Kenya as a refugee. I used to live there for 4 years in the refugee camp. Since we're talking about refugees today, I am actually one of the refugees that came from a different country that lives here today in this grateful country. I moved here in 2004 when I was 14, and I started going to high school. I came here with my family, not my whole family, but my brother, his wife, and 2 daughters. I started going to school. I finished school, and then I went to a community college, and right now I'm actually going to GVSU, pursuing to become international relations. I work with the Western Michigan Refugee Education and Cultural Center. I actually started working there in 2009 and helping the refugee students that are struggling through schools. I mean, I've been there before. I know the struggle, the language barrier, the culture, and the new school system and all of that. And it's really, really difficult for the students. I work with the students right now. They're really great, and they're struggling. What we do is really, it's really a mind-opening for them too. So I'm here today to share my experience with you guys, and I'm here. Thank you.
My name is Christine Van Nord, and I am originally from the Granville area. And when I was in college, I took a Middle East Studies course specifically focused on Iraq. And that was my first chance to really start thinking about what people in other countries were going through. I'd always been interested in international travel, but had never really looked too much into major issues that were going on overseas. When after I graduated from college, I ran a program where I helped college students have like study abroad type experiences. And during that time, they wanted to open up the Middle East as a possible country, a possible area to send students to. So I got the opportunity to go to Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. I was supposed to go to Syria, but the road to Damascus was snowed out and I couldn't go through. So I got a chance to be there and saw that it would have been it was a great experience for our college students, but I also just fell in love with the area. I felt more truly me there and just enjoyed it so much. So I came back and told my boss, yes, we can definitely send students there, and here's my resignation, I'm moving to the Middle East. And that's exactly what I did. And I lived in the Middle East for 5 years. I lived in Jordan first and then in Egypt. I had an opportunity to work with Iraqi refugees. When I was in Jordan, I started an English language program there. and then moved to Egypt and worked with a local pastor there, kind of helping the Christian church reach out to people in North Africa and the Middle East. And then when I ended up coming back to the States, I worked with Iraqi refugees in Atlanta area. And then about 6 years ago, had the opportunity to move back up to Grand Rapids. Never thought I would ever live here again. But as my dad said, I found the perfect job for me. And he goes, this kind of job doesn't normally exist in this area. And so I've had a chance now, first as our employment program manager at Bethany Christian Services, and then now as our program manager over all of our refugee adult and family programs. I've had a chance to do something really unique, and that is to love and to care for refugees from all over the world, including from the Middle East. I speak Arabic, and so that's a wonderful thing for me to be able to continue to have that connection. But I also get to help my community welcome refugees, and especially during this time of the refugee crisis, and as West Michigan trying to kind of determine what does this look like for us to welcome refugees, I think it's an incredible privilege for me to be able to kind of bridge those two worlds that I have of the Middle East and West Michigan, and be able to assist in that way. So Bethany Christian Services is one of the refugee resettlement agencies here. We have services that include that initial resettlement period in the first 90 days of a refugee being here, but then we have other services that can take place over a longer period of time, including up to 5 years in the United States, and that includes health programs, employment services, and counseling services for those that are survivors of torture and trauma.
Thank you all so much. As you can all see, we have folks here that represent different aspects of the refugee resettlement journey and process, and so I'm excited to hear from each of them about how they have experienced refugee resettlement in our community. So I'm going to actually start with Abdi and ask you a question. What are some cultural and societal norms that we take for granted, something that a newcomer might need to know about, but that maybe you didn't know about, or you've seen kids and families that they didn't know about?
Well, Susan, thank you for asking for that. Thank you for asking for that question. Well, back, when I first moved here in 2004, while we didn't know anything about what was going on in the house, because when you're a refugee, you actually live in a small house with four people, different ages. Your parents are sleeping with them in there, and it's really, really terrible. And when you move here, you have your own room, in a big house. But then there are certain things that, we see granted that we don't see back home. That is actually one of the things, which is, let's say, like electric bills or the rent. That's actually one of the things that if the refugees that are struggling to pay, because when they come here, they have no idea if they are supposed to be paying a bill, okay? And then the second thing is, when you live in a refugee camp, you don't have access to a clean water, or you don't have access to a good school, you don't have access to a good food. But when you live in America, which is like a really great country, and you have everything just set up, and you got a food stamp, you can just go do shopping, you can go to a local market. But then when you live in the refugee camp, you don't have that. And when the families come here, they need to know all those things in detail. This is what the culture is, and this is what you be expected to do when you live here for a long period of time. You have to adapt to it, and you have to get used to what the other people are doing. So paying the electric bill, the rent, going to work, actually that's a normal thing. You have to go to work when you live in the refugee camp, but then the work is actually not a great job that you can get something from it, you can support your family. It's not enough that you can bring to the family. But when you're here, you get that support where you can get some government assistance, where some of the families don't even know anything about it. And the other thing is actually a community. Right now, I have a community that's building, which we didn't have that in the past, and it was really, really a big deal for the newcomers right now. But when you have that community, you can bring your own people together, and you can build that and then contribute to the other communities or the state that you live in.
Thank you, Abdi. The bill thing, I think, is something that not many of us think about, is the idea of paying a bill.
Yeah.
It can be foreign, and what that concept is. So thank you for sharing that. Tara, as a volunteer, what surprised you?
There were many things, but like I had mentioned, I had lived in Paraguay and worked with women living in a garbage dump for quite a few months, and at that time I spoke some Spanish, but I think as a volunteer I did not speak Swahili at all, and my friend Veronique spoke very little English, kind of just an emergency level English, and just the power of gestures and how not to be intimidated by working with refugees because of the language barrier, that there are things that are universal in terms of humanity, like talking about the love for your children and food and houses, and I mean, you can come across so many things just by gestures and facial expressions and excitement and different things, and pointing, obviously. But beyond that, kind of talking about language, I think coming into my volunteer experience, I was thinking, oh, this woman needs to learn English. Like, that is her primary need, and that's what I'm going to offer her. And we're going to meet at a coffee shop or in her home and have an hour to 2 hours of instruction every week, or a couple times a week. And really, even though that is a primary need, because language translates into acclimating here in such a huge way, there are so many more pressing needs, I guess, that kind of beyond that. And so I would meet to talk to her about vowel sounds, and we would end up filling out a resume, or talking about how to access insurance, because now she had saved up enough money to get a car, but how do you go through that process if you're new here? Where her children were preschool age, and at home they were not speaking English, and here there's these young minds that can just grasp language so quickly, but we're having no interaction with anyone speaking English outside of myself, and facilitating how to get involved in preschool, which you would have been useful. But and there's just so many things. WIC benefits, that's another huge thing. Like, here they have this access to food, but you go to a grocery store and trying to find the label for the exact food that they're able to purchase with this money, and then how do you cook it? Like, they didn't know what oatmeal was, and here this is something that is available. So just kind of recognizing that the primary need a lot of times is just the relationship, that having a connection with a local goes so far in terms of the assets that is embedded in that relationship than just the idea of, teaching English.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Christine, so resettlement and integration is a complex process. People always ask me what that means, and it's difficult to define. We'll know it when we get there. But there are also a lot of barriers. So from your perspective as someone who's worked with resettlement for quite some time, what are the 2 to 3 most pressing barriers or obstacles facing refugees in West Michigan right now at this moment? And what are some things that this group here, or our community in general, could do to address those barriers?
I think the number one barrier is safe, affordable housing. It's really difficult to find safe, affordable housing, and if we are only able to find a house that has a higher rent, then that means that when the refugee quite quickly needs to be paying their own rent, that it's just unaffordable. And so I think that's a huge need. And so one way that you could help is, if you know any landlords, or if you are yourself a landlord, please reach out to us. That is an incredible assistance, because there are some interesting things in renting to refugees. So it really takes an understandable landlord, but they end up being great tenants, and many of them end up staying for a very long period of time as well. The second area I would say I'm going to kind of lump under trauma. As the video explained, refugees are those that are fleeing for their lives. They are fleeing persecution. And so often that means that they have undergone great physical trauma or have been in refugee camps for a long time and have not had the medical care. But for those that have gone through a lot of physical trauma, they may have wounds that have not been addressed or health issues that have not been addressed, as well as mental health needs that are quite great. And so that would probably be the second area. We are seeing clients with greater mental and medical health needs than at any other time before. And I think a lot of that is because of what they are fleeing currently. So a specific point to help in that, we are very grateful for the primary care physicians and counselors that are willing to accept Medicaid and to see refugees. We always need new providers to assist with that. And then we need people to help with medical transports to be able to get to those medical appointments. I find the medical system in West Michigan overwhelming for me personally, just to figure out how to navigate it. Can you imagine if you're doing that in another language when you've never experienced that before? It's really overwhelming. So having someone come alongside of you and kind of help you navigate that system is extremely helpful. The third area I would say is just kind of in the area of English and education. Obviously learning a new language is a big thing and is overwhelming. As well as just education in and of itself. We have clients that come from a very wide range, from those that have never had the opportunity to learn how to read and write in their own language. And so this is that first chance to be able to do that. But think of what it would look like to be to be non-literate in this community. I had a small little taste of that when I moved to the Middle East before I learned how to read and write. And it's overwhelming. Every single thing that you see, you can't understand. And so learning those pieces, as well as learning how to communicate in English. So a great way to help is very similar to what Tara said, is just coming alongside and being a friend and helping learn, for those that are first learning how to read and write, how to learn how to write your name and celebrate that. For those that have much more educational experience, to kind of help them learn how to do that here in the U.S. and kind of navigate that. So really the best way that each one of that you can help is to come alongside of a refugee and welcome them and be friends and kind of break down some of those barriers.
Thank you, Christine. And now we can open up for questions from the audience. If you do have a question, if you could come and speak in the mic so that our participants that are live streaming in can hear what you have to say, and then we'll have our panel respond.
Good evening. Is this on? Good evening. My name is Alan Headbloom from Feel Like You Belong TV. All of you work in the nonprofit sector, and the Grand Rapids area has shown itself to be very generous in terms of welcoming incoming people. Among U.S. cities, it's in the top 10 for helping to resettle refugees. But at some point, there has to come to a point of volunteer fatigue or generosity fatigue. How do you keep putting out, this message of welcome when we're already so inundated, per capita with this population?
I'll respond to that. One, just on a personal level, I think you need to know your boundaries. So I was very integrated with the family that I was working with, and then more family arrived, and by the time I knew it, there were 15 people in my little family. And so kind of being able to know when to say no, and I think that's the beauty of having a real relationship with them, is that just like a friend, they have respect for you, you know, once you've built that relationship. So if you say, my child is sick, or I just can't tonight, like, they will understand. So just kind of on a personal level, but I think how you're talking about the inundation and just being saturated, I haven't seen that from an individual volunteer level. I have a big network of friends and family, and I'm the only one involved in this. And so I think there is just a huge capacity for welcome that we are kind of missing out on, and we're the ones missing out on it, because it is a beautiful relationship that you can have with someone, and it doesn't have to be, you know, one person trying to figure out how to do all the transportation and the immunizations and finding jobs and doing all of this. But if you take the one step just to do one thing, then your network of people that you're connected with might better know those needs and how to kind of jump on board with you. And so I think that we have a huge capacity to still help, and we're not run dry quite yet.
You know, Alan, I probably would have agreed with you about a year ago in terms of, you know, the core people that were volunteering and the core churches and community groups that were getting involved. But then the U.S. became aware of the Syrian refugee crisis in August, and then so much news has been since then, both positive and negative, about welcoming refugees. And we have seen a whole new group of volunteers come. People, actually, when the news became the most negative, our phones were just ringing off the hook of how can we help? And so we're seeing a whole new wave of volunteers and churches and community groups and universities wanting to assist. We even have a group from Spectrum Health that's co-sponsoring a family right now. And just all these places that had never gotten involved before are now getting involved. And so I kind of feel like there is this fresh ability to be able to respond. Now, one of the things that we are trying to be very careful about is not exceeding the capacity of some of the services that are here in this area. From the health department to the schools and many others. So one of the things that the refugee resettlement agencies are doing are looking at other communities that are really wanting to welcome refugees and placing refugees in those communities. So primarily like Holland and Kalamazoo. There are many, many people in those communities that are coming to us and saying, we want to assist, how can we assist? And so we are intentionally placing families in those places as well to make sure that we're really working within the capacity of what Grand Rapids can do and really listening to those community stakeholders.
Hi, my name's Laura. My name's Lori. Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Lori, and I'm involved for several years with a refugee family, and I have one little funny story, and then I also have a question. My story is when they were starting to have children and they were naming their children, I would say, well, what is the baby's name going to be? Oh, we're going to name him Anus. And I'm going, oh, do you know what anus means in English? And they go, I go, well, it means this. And the little girl goes, oh, we were going to name our baby brother Butt. So you really have to work with, I mean, they came up with some pretty strange names that if they got in school, they probably would be mocked. But anyway, that's just a little side story. One of the questions I have is, what about driving? You know, once they're here and they get jobs, drivers training, is there people to help them? I've tried to help the person that I'm with, and I can't stand being in the car when she's driving. So are there volunteers that would do that?
So just today, our driver's training class at Bethany started, and we kind of have a cool setup where we do a classroom portion, and then we have golf carts because it's a little less scary than being out on the street in a regular car. It can still be scary at 5 miles an hour, so we wear helmets. And we have kind of souped up our golf carts with everything that you would need. So there's seat belts and there's blinkers and there's everything that you would have in a car so that the clients can get used to that. These classes are particularly for our clients that are in our employment program so that they can get their permits and their licenses so that they can have more sustainable work and more options there. There are also some places that you can go to hire someone to teach them how to drive. We do have a few brave volunteers that are also willing to do that. But yeah, that is definitely an area of need. Are you one of the brave volunteers, Farrah?
I have done it, yes. And a little bit feared for my life. But it was a fun adventure.
Abdi, how did you feel learning to drive for the first time? What was that experience like for you?
It was scary. Yeah, so my brother was actually the first in the family who took his driver's license, and after that I was in high school, so he kind of wanted to show me how to drive. But then at that moment, I was actually shaking to just grab the steering wheel, and then I was using both of my feet. One was on the brakes and one was on the so it was just a scary experience. It took me about, I don't know, a year to learn how to drive. So I was taking it step by step. I didn't rush myself through it. And we were doing it only on Sundays when there's no traffic and the roads are clear or just an open parking lot. It was actually really a good experience, and it was scary, but I finally got my permit and then my driver's license, and it was exciting afterwards. Yeah.
My name is Kathy. I have two questions. One, I have no idea how many refugees we have in the West Michigan area. I'd like to know that. And if there's any particular concentration where they're from. But also I'm wondering, what's is there, I know assimilation was a lifelong process, but is there assimilation time frame to get people comfortable with daily life and education?
So you guys might have to help me remember. I'll start with the last one. How about that? So the assimilation time frame, again, like you said, it kind of depends on what you mean by that. The initial refugee resettlement process is 90 days. And so kind of the idea, I know it's so short, right? Crazy. So the idea is just kind of get them to be able to navigate their life to a degree during that 90-day period. Our desire would be able to be economically self-sufficient within 6 months. And many refugees are able to do that, at least to a degree again. Probably still maybe be on benefits, it depends on the family. We find, within a year or two, people, are starting to get out of survival mode and then into more of a point of thriving. We see, within 5 years that people are buying homes, they're starting small businesses. You have several small businesses right across the way here over near Kragt, started by Bhutanese Nepali refugees. It also depends on the family. It depends on so many different factors, including health and education. In terms of who's coming right now, so you had asked for how many refugees are in the Grand Rapids area. It depends on how you define that. So after 1 year, they adjust their status. If we're saying they're only refugees for 1 year, that's a much smaller number. But if we're talking about those that have come in initially as refugees, we're estimating somewhere around 25,000 into the West Michigan area. But that includes, the Bosnians came, about 15 years ago. Then you had the Sudanese coming. More recently, large population of Burmese and Bhutanese, primarily in this area. And then the more recent arrivals, the Somali community, which has really grown and strengthened, especially in the last couple of years where they've really stayed in the area. The Congolese, and the Congolese are one of the groups that we expect to really increase in the next several years. So coming from the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We are also seeing arrivals from Syria and from Iraq, as well as Eritrea, South Sudan, and Cuba, as well as a few other places.
I'm Sriskarun McCarthy, and I'm from Greenville, so it's quite a long way to Grand Rapids area. 2 questions. If I'm interested in volunteering in whatever I can do, who should I talk to? To all of you, or?
To answer that, there is a group of individuals back at this back table afterwards. Go talk to them. If you want to work with our organization at the Refugee Education Center, we'd love to have you. Otherwise, however we can help you get linked up with an organization, family, whatever it is, we'd love to help you.
Question number 2, I like success story like Abdi, for example. And we do have a lot of refugees from the past, like Bosnian you mentioned. Is there any community of successful refugees who are here and stay in West Michigan who return their, get back kind of, and help out with the new refugee coming to West Michigan and get, because they have the experience and they can kind of tell the new people in a way. Thank you.
Yes, there are a lot of refugees that have become extremely successful and now are welcoming more people either from their community or other communities. As I mentioned, we have several that have opened small businesses, and some of those small businesses are specifically to serve their community, to make sure that they have access to the foods and different types of services that they would normally in their own country. And we also, so like my staff has multiple people on it that are from different refugee backgrounds and cultures. So they're giving back through working at an organization like ours. There's also a lot of community groups that have been started, and churches that have started within each people group so that they can really provide that cultural support to one another and then to others that are welcoming.
Hello, my name is Len, and thus far the discussion has been very positive, the good things and the easy solutions, the difficult solutions, but generally solutions. I'm wondering if you have encountered much xenophobia and or blatant racism in your work, and I wonder if you had any stories you could tell about that.
I can share a couple of stories. There's one in a classroom, I'm not going to say what school district, but we had an instance where a small elementary school student was wearing a head covering or a hijab, and one of her fellow classmates started calling her a terrorist. It was quite traumatic for the child. She had no idea why she would be labeled that. And it was one of those instances where the school actually didn't know how to handle it. It really does, I mean, and I can't say that any of us wouldn't necessarily do anything different, but just kind of go, okay, let's panic a little bit here. So that was something that really raised our awareness for the need to educate teachers and help them think proactively about how to handle those situations. It also raised our level of awareness of the importance of, kids pick up on what their parents are saying and how we talk about other people. They pick up on the news and what the news is saying. So for me personally, that really raised my level of awareness there. I also had an instance where I was working, when I worked at Bethany as a case manager, where one of my clients was assaulted and asked if he was Muslim, which he was, but he told them he was Hispanic, and thankfully the police had intervened in time. But he actually he changed his name so that he would tell people that he was Hispanic, because he was so afraid of being associated as Iraqi or Muslim. So, yeah.
Grand Rapids in West Michigan has been extremely welcoming, and thankfully we haven't really had issues. There's been some tracking being done just to kind of figure out where there have been issues, and there are multiple other states where there have been problems. And in this part of Michigan, we haven't really experienced a whole lot. But it is an area kind of ongoing concern for me, and something that we're really going to be addressing with our refugees, which I think is sad that I need to do that, but I also think that we need to be proactive to talk about what their rights are and what to do if someone does not treat them appropriately, what kind of action that they have, what is available to them. And so unfortunately, those are conversations that we are going to be having with new arrivals, trying to do it in a balanced way, because we really do want them to feel welcomed and safe here. As you can tell from the refugee story, they haven't been welcomed in their first country. They had to flee. They weren't welcomed in their second country. They couldn't live viably there. So their only other option was to come to a third country. So we desperately want them to feel welcome. And thankfully, they have in West Michigan. Almost all arrivals, we have a big welcoming party when they come, right? It's fantastic. But the reality is that those kinds of responses are possible. And so we need to make sure people are prepared for it.
Hi, my name is Jed Anderson. I was wondering, the people that are allowed to migrate, what is their English capability? Is that part of the process? And the second is, it's you hope to become proficient in 6 months. Who provides the means for them to live financially, go to the store, rent an apartment, as you say, and so forth? Who does that? Because I assume they arrive with no money and hardly any clothes.
So refugee clients are given $925 per person that's given to the resettlement agency to be used on their behalf. It's a one-time amount, and that is used for rent, utilities, the initial food, any kinds of furnishings. It's not a lot of money, right? $925 per person. So that's why we rely so heavily on volunteers and on donations of household items to make that possible. They are eligible for benefits. And then we also work really hard with them through our employment program at Bethany to be able to help them get employed. So we have English language classes, and I by no means mean that they're able to fully communicate in English in 6 months. That's not realistic, but we are able to kind of give them the skills and the tools. Our English classes are specifically focused on employment and give them the language that they would need on the job. And then we work with them. We do work skills training and job-specific trainings to kind of bridge that gap of lack of U.S. work history. And we work with many, many different local employers to help place them in jobs so that they can become economically self-sufficient as soon as possible. And many of them do not want to be on benefits and really work hard to get off of those benefits as soon as possible. Yeah. So there is a big range when people come. They do not need to have any level of English to come. But we work with them on that, and they are able, again, this is a life-saving program to be able to help people who are fleeing for their lives. And so that is regardless of English level.
Hi, Suzanne Rohus from Battle Creek. Are there any best practices for helping refugee teenagers who don't feel that they fit into either culture, the traditional culture of their parents or the American culture of their peers?
If you can chime in too, Abdi. So we operate support groups. They're either at our location or in the schools. And that's focused on a wide variety of topics, but it's really addressing that particular issue of what's my identity now. Being a teenager is hard for all of us, or was hard for all of us, I think, trying to figure out who you were. Your parents don't understand you. A lot of times the parents really don't understand. They don't know what their kids are facing in the school. So we work closely to have a supportive social and emotional environment that helps kids navigate that and identify identify what are the struggles they're having in home, what are the struggles they're having in school, and really give them the tools to kind of realize who they are and really be okay with that. We also work very closely with parents to help them understand the exact same thing we're talking to the kids, we're saying to the parents. And I think that's really important, that the parents understand what we're saying to their kids, that they understand what they're facing in school, so that it's not just us providing that social and emotional support, but that we're really equipping families to hopefully be able to do that as well. And if you want more information, I'm happy to share with you later.
We have time for just one more question, so.
My name is Michael, and 25 years ago, our Chamber of Commerce made the issue of healing racism as a business imperative. And so for 25 years, our community has been extremely involved in trying to deal with issues of racism. And, so here we are. I'm a white male. I've been born with privilege. I don't have to deal with any of that if I choose not to. So, but being involved in the business community, we've really tried to work at this. So recently there was an article in Forbes magazine right after Grand Rapids was ranked as one of the best places affordability to live in the United States. And Forbes came out with an article saying we're the absolute worst city in the United States if you're a person of color, in all rankings. Grand Valley State University didn't believe it and asked the Dorothy Johnson Research Institute go and do a study in all aspects and in every category, with the Asian, Hispanic, Middle Eastern, African American, African, etc. We're ranked worst. So how is that impacting all of the work that you're doing? Because we have to admire the amazing impact on our community of the cultures coming here and helping us advance into the 21st century. This is a much richer place to live because of it. But there's a huge sacrifice for the people who have been born here, live here, and come here when they're persons of color. How are you really confronting it? The gentleman asked the question about it, but if we're the worst, it's got to be a huge embarrassment, and especially for somebody who's saying, oh my gosh, I'm coming into a country where I may be going into the worst community possible if I'm a person of color.
Yeah, I obviously I'm also white, so I think it's difficult for me to really be able to answer that question. I do know from many of our refugee families that they have felt very welcome here, and that they have felt like they could build their life here, and that they do have an opportunity to have a hope and a future here. Do we have a long ways to go, and do we have a lot to grow? And I agree. And I do think welcoming refugees helps us in that, and helps us to really become a more diverse, I believe this is, like you said, a much richer, more diverse place because of those that we are welcoming here.
I was just going to mention the part that we can play in connecting people. So by having those kinds of relationships with refugees, not only can you break down barriers in terms of conversations with people and their perceptions, but then also in the networks that, every individual is involved in, whether that's professional or in your church community or just in your general relationships, how if you see a skill, for instance, the father of Veronique, my friend from the Congo, he was a truck driver in his home country, but coming here, like how to bridge the barriers of, getting the right driver's license and having enough workable English to pass the test that he needs to pass in order to do that. That's something that is very difficult on his own. But if we work together to recognize the assets and the skills of people and maybe connect them with job opportunities, then I think as people are elevated into positions, beyond just working in the factory and, filling fruit boxes and the kinds of jobs that generally they have when they come, the more that I think that can change through business. But I think it takes individuals to do that.
And I would just say, I think education, we like to say education isn't for its own sake. It's about empowering people and giving the students that we work with the chance to be who they are. Because if you don't have that college degree or that opportunity to learn English, unfortunately often you don't get to have, the question we ask to kids a lot of times is, what do you want to be when they grow up? And that's not something that's something that we're all asked growing up, and those of us especially with privilege. Sometimes kids laugh at that, like, what do you mean, what do I want to be? I don't have that choice. So education is for me personally, the tool to give kids to be the choice, to have the choice to be who they want to be. And I also think another way we address that is by the issues of racism, is by having these conversations and really thinking through our own biases here, and trying to figure out how do we make sure that we're attentive to that, the needs of refugees in our community, and use our own social capital to benefit those that are most vulnerable and often are unseen. So is there anything any of you would like to add? Okay. Okay.
Refugees are, when they come here, they actually need the education. The first thing, when my students are going to go to school, when are they going to start going to school? So when we're doing the school enrollments, the refugees that we are dealing with, where they came from, they only see doctors and teachers on their daily lives. So when you ask them, like Susan just mentioned, what do you want to be when you grow up? They just say, hey, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher. They don't have that many choices where they came from. If they say, hey, I want to be a policeman, back where I came from, we don't really trust the police a lot, because of there are some trust issues and there are some conflicts that's been happening with the government and the people that live there. So when they come here, they have that choice. They can become whatever they want, and then you give them this opportunity to become whatever they want. Like right now, when I first came here, I didn't know, like Susan just mentioned, I didn't know what I wanted to be, But then after going to high school, my teachers keep asking me, and my classmates were asking me, and they were telling their teachers, hey, I want to be this, I want to be this during senior year, and then, I have to be something. I can't just keep going and going to school. I have to make a choice and I have to do this. Then I end up working with the Western Michigan Refugee Education and Cultural Center right now, which I'm giving back to the community what I've won in the past. So education is actually a very strong role that we have to advocate and encourage the refugee students that are coming into the country. So I think that encouragement and having a connection with the refugee families will change a lot in our communities. That's Western Michigan.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Abdi, Christine, and Tara, for sharing, and thank you for everyone who asked questions. That was really helpful. And so on your way out, you can find more information about the Refugee Education Center. There are volunteers there, and I'm sure Christine will be around to talk about questions if you have questions about the resettlement process or the work at Bethany as well.
I'd also like to echo Susan's thanks to the panel, but also thank you to the audience for asking such thoughtful questions. I just thought this was a really useful, productive discussion on a topic, again, that often isn't useful or productive, so it's great. I have a couple of quick final last-minute details to talk to you about. Much like the West Michigan Refugee Education and Cultural Center, the World Affairs Council of Western Michigan also has an information table at the back. If you didn't check it out on your way in, please check it out on your way out. We do offer free memberships. So if you enjoyed the programming tonight, there's more to come. In fact, here's a couple of things that we're doing. Along with the Kent District Library, our partnership with them, where we'll be running 2 more series on refugees, and how it impacts different communities. We're also partnering with Spectrum Health to bring a free webcast and local networking event that's looking specifically at the healthcare needs of refugees in this community. And there's information in the back if you want to check that out if you're interested, if you work in the healthcare industry. If you want more engagement tonight on this issue, one of the fun things that we do is to host a little meetup afterwards. This is in conjunction with a Cultural Explorers meetup hosted by Kathy Dopp. Kathy, all right, there she is right in the front row. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and they're meeting up at El Arriero on 28th Street. It's free to attend, you just have to pay for your refreshments. So if you want to keep talking about these issues tonight, feel free to head over there right now. Well, not right now, after we conclude. And then finally, another quick thing, we always host a trivia contest every year called World Quest. It's almost famous. It's kind of looking at trivia from an international perspective. This is coming up on Thursday, May 19th. You can sign up as either an individual or as a team, and in fact, I think the Kent District Library, their staff had a team last year, and they can certify that it was a lot of fun. So if you're interested, go ahead and talk with our marketing associate, Ashley, in the back. And then finally, like I said, just make sure that on your way out, you check out the information that you need. If you missed that, you can head to our website, worldmichigan.org, to find more information as well. So finally, let me introduce Heidi Nagel. She's going to close the program.
I knew I would do that. I can help if you want. So, on behalf of Kent District Library, we just have a small gift to our panelists. We just want to thank them for their time. They did a spectacular job, and I am so proud of this program tonight. I'm so proud of World Affairs Council and our partnership, and just honored to be able to host this kind of discussion in our community, which is so incredibly valuable. So just a couple of things. Erica had already talked about our upcoming partnership programs, which are in the 2 subsequent Monday nights, same time. I'm really delighted. For the first time, KDL is live streaming this event on YouTube, and we're really excited about that. Give a shout out to our group in Traverse City, who are really excited and wanted to come to this event, and I said, you don't have to come, you can watch it on the internet. So we're really excited to bring this kind of program to all of those who are interested in having a civil and thoughtful conversation on a controversial topic. And Kent District Library, of course, believes in the incredible power of stories, and there's just a very small book list for you if you're interested in learning more about the different types of experience that people have in the refugee community. And we have also put out our Spring Kaleidoscope program. This is the first time that we are doing a community-wide reading program, KDL Reads. It's centered around the book Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. She will be at the Comstock Park High School on May 26th. And it's a very beautiful story. And again, we just really believe that stories are a great way that help us as humans to come together regardless of our experience, and this just fits in so beautifully with it. So thank you very much for sharing your evening with us. We really appreciate it. Have a beautiful night.